Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Down But Not Out. Today I'm joined by Eric Frankel. Eric spent 2 decades at Warner Bros., serving as the president of Warner Bros. Domestic cable distribution for eight of those years before leaving to co found AdGreetz. AdGreetz is a leading video personalization platform that empowers agencies and ad platforms to easily revolutionize their marketing by producing and deploying thousands of hyper personalized, relevant, data driven video and display ads and messages. Working with some of the largest brands across the globe currently, Forrester calls AdGreetz an emerging technology for CMOs to watch. Eric, thanks for being on the show.
Nick, thanks for inviting me. Pleasure to be here today.
Awesome. So before we get started, could you give us an introduction to yourself? Walk us as far back as you want.
Sure. Short version of my tale is was lucky enough at college to realize the first day in a communications class that there were 500 kids who thought they were all going to get the next big communications job the day we graduated. So I decided to run concerts at Syracuse University, which is a very large university. I went to the communication school there, and I ended up running more concerts in more facilities than any other kid at any college in America, and ran television commercials and more or less did about 37 concerts over the course of a year in 9 different facilities. And so when I graduated, I had a big portfolio of success. And in turn, I got offered a lot of jobs, not to be arrogant at all here, and got offered a job at Warner Brothers, the movie television company, as the world of home video was just coming on track. And I went to work there on a trial basis for $300 a week, where my boss said, if it works in 3 months, you'll see a raise to $335 a week. And 3 months later, I was looking at my pay stub to see, and I had passed the test. And he had told me 6 months later, if when I was hired, he said, in 6 months later, I'll give you a bump to $375. And he called me in one day and said, I'm giving you $390. And that was the beginning of a career that lasted almost 30 years. After 20 years working out of New York, I got a phone call from the chairman of Warner Brothers in Los Angeles saying, I bet your boss hasn't told you he's retiring. Come move out here, become president of the division you've worked at for 20 years. So I did that for almost another decade. And what I did there was I ran US movie and television distribution. If you turned on a television set, anything you saw more or less that had a Warner Brothers logo, myself and my terrific team would be the people who made those deals, whether it was Nickelodeon, HBO, NBC, or what have you. And I decided many, many years ago that television was going to evolve from appointment-based 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock to on demand, press a button, watch what you want when you want. I spent about 12 years leading that charge, and all of my clients who I sold billions of dollars worth of programming to said, Eric, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. No one would ever press a button and pick and choose. I know they do that on YouTube, but that's because they're watching a funny little cat video or how to bake banana bread or their favorite rock video. I know we pay $4 and to buy Harry Potter in an early window, but all of television being that way doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We disagreed. We spent 12 years. We convinced the entire industry to embrace it. Next thing I knew, my division was making billions of more dollars. I woke up one day before I wore t-shirts and jeans and Nikes every day, but used to wear suits and ties and luxury clothing. I said, I have next to no relationship with any brand because brands don't treat me any differently than the way they communicate with a 12-year-old girl or a 92-year-old grandfather. Most of the messaging takes the form of an email that looks like a letter from 1964. It looks like a print ad from 1986 that became an email or a banner ad, or the TV commercials that I grew up with on NBC moved over to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, what have you. So I said, there's got to be a better way to converse with past, current, and prospective customers. So I ended up leaving Warner, getting together with the former chairman of the Walt Disney Company, the former chairman of 20th Century Fox, the former chairman of HBO, the former president of CBS, and many other illustrative, really smart executives. And we went into the business of taking that ad that used to talk to you and me, Nick, about dresses and high heels and pocketbooks,
Yep.
and instead talk to you about, it looks like your button down black shirt, my t-shirt, our blue jeans, remind us where the local store is, remind you that the sale starts in 8 hours, welcome you, thank you, and do it with compelling content. And over the decade or little less that we've actually been doing this, we do this on more channels, meaning this is email, this is app, this is Facebook, this is Instagram, this is Snapchat, this is LinkedIn, this is Twitter, and more. And we've just begun doing it about 2 months ago on television, primarily streaming. So now you and I could be sitting watching the Super Bowl on Sunday if we have that account yet, and you could be seeing an ad, for example, telling you to go to your local McDonald's, and maybe you're married with children, so it would be saying, thinking about food for you and your family in Ottawa or whatever, and I'd be seeing a Los Angeles version that's no longer talking about me and my family because my youngest is 23 years old and he's with his buddies doing whatever he's doing. So smart data driven, hyper personalized ads and messages. The difference between an ad and a message. A message is an email or something you see on your app where there's not a media cost. An ad, you've had to buy some media to talk to you or me. And that's what we do all around the world. And just like the streaming story that I like to start off with that took 12 years to convince the world, and now, it's Friday. Tonight, we're all going to press buttons and watch whatever we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're busy just chipping away at this world of brands, agencies, and ad platforms, and explaining that an ad that talks to me about diapers for my baby when my baby's 23, or lipstick, which I don't use, isn't a good ad. But if that same drugstore chain talked to me about shaving products, that would be a good ad.
And are you the data as well in there, or are you the
No,
platform,
so
or both to
we're data
personalize?
agnostic, and
Yeah,
only going to say this because there's a lot of confusion about data, and it's pretty interesting. So
yeah,
whether you or I like it, and we probably don't, um, except for the business aspect, almost everything we do in life, every transaction is captured, rolled up, and sold to entities. So there
absolutely.
are
Yep.
a dozen companies that know hundreds, if not 2,500 things about you and me. We're men.
Yep.
Are we married? Are we single? Do we have children? Are they babies? Are they grown up? Did we go to college? Do we rent apartments, own houses, have cars? Are we looking for cars? Are we thinking about getting married? Where do we shop? Are we vegetarians? Do we like the Beatles or Rolling Stones or Jay-Z? And any and every other data point you could imagine. So depending, there's a wide variety of different types of data. We'll do the easiest one, brand data. Pretend you go to a popular US department store called Macy's, and literally tens, if not 100 million people have bought products from them. And in turn, in most cases, Macy knows, hey, that's Eric Frankel, and he bought a black t-shirt, and he had it shipped to this address in this town village, or he was buying baby clothes, or his wife buys. So there's brand data. Most ad platforms, Facebook knows several hundred things about all of us, so you can pick and choose and target, as does Google. Facebook, on top of that, has tons of affinity groups, so they know whether you like the Bible or whether you like snowboarding. And in turn, the difference between targeting, which people have been doing for a while, and what we do, many times people go, we'll just talk to people who are 18 to 49 or whatever. we don't believe that they're all the same. So we'll talk to this woman about what we either know or think she likes versus this woman about what she knows or thinks. So, there's no reason to talk to me in sunny Los Angeles. Before we started, Nick, we were talking about the weather. Where you are today will
Yes, yeah.
be like -5 degrees. I don't, whatever the equivalent
I
is.
might need a snowboard, you don't. Yeah,
Yes, and
yeah,
and if I didn't work, I could go to the beach or jump in my swimming pool today because we're lucky. It's not
yeah,
like this every day, but this is an unusually good, week for warm weather. Um,
yeah,
so that's what we try to do. Some people want to buy a car and are focused on the performance. I don't really know about different engine sizes and horsepower and all that, but some people that's the most important. To other people, it's about comfort. Other young families, it's all about how safe is it for the babies in the back seat. Um, and so the data is available from brands, from the ad platforms, and then all of these other data companies. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. And you sort of won't be able to run an operation. Many of the giant data companies, they have many, many clients who purchase this data, but they don't use it properly or almost use it at all. They feel it's an obligation to have data, but then they talk to you and me about a dress, um, or lipstick, even though it doesn't make
yeah,
any sense. So we work with those
yeah.
data companies who like the idea that we can help them teach their clients how to utilize the data better and in turn make their data more valuable.
Got it. It seems like very useful, obviously, and where the world's going in regards to personalization. We at Visitor Q have something new coming out as well, where we're allowing our clients to personalize their website based on the characteristics of the visitor. If you're in this industry, if you have this amount of employees, and so on. So I think you did a great job at explaining exactly what it does. I think it paints a very clear picture for the audience. So to kind of recap, 30 years right out of school, Warner Bros. 8 of those as a president, Warner Brothers, and then 11 years ago, you it sounds like teamed up with the top of the top of these of the other entertainment companies to form AdGreetz. Did they join as co-founders
No,
in the
no.
company as
So
well? No.
no. So it was Eric. We know you from your career at Warner Brothers. We think you're an honest, terrific, hardworking, bright person. Um,
Yeah.
we'll all throw some money on the table. I threw money on the table, and we'll come
Yeah.
to meetings 1, 2, 4 times a year, hear how you're doing, offer a little advice. But no, I then went out, and hired, I forgot what it was at the time, let's pretend 15 people. That's
Yeah.
now closer to 30 people.
Yeah.
I had the office in LA and an office in New York, which has now expanded to Miami, Philadelphia, London, Paris, Sydney, Australia, Kuwait City, and I think that's it off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like over the past 11 years, things have gone well. But obviously, as we know, you're on the show for a reason. Things don't always go the best. How far into your journey did your down but not out story occur? And then start walking us through that.
Well, first of all, just for everyone, this is, I mean, I would argue that probably 8 out of 10 people who could be on this show aren't on this show because they went out of business. So,
Yeah,
so the down but not out, is an exception versus, I think, the rule. It's very
yeah,
easy to be out. And fortunately, I would say that if it wasn't for some wherewithal, meaning capital, that I ended up saving during my tenure at Warner Brothers, I wouldn't be here and we would have been out.
yeah,
Because people don't pay you on time, whether it's rent, whether it's all of these technical monthly expenses that you
yeah,
that you acquire, your AWS bill and whatever else it might be. It's very easy to be out. So the major reason we're not out, above and beyond my investors multiple times putting more money on the table, but eventually it was me, sort of, and me alone, until now we're at a level where people are coming in and saying, I think I'd like to invest money in your company to help you grow even bigger. So very often you're up late at night wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, look at the clock, and you feel like you could be out. Um,
Yeah.
um, but I think that the story that I was going to talk about, specifically, I wouldn't say this is out, but there's always challenges, and an interesting one in this case was here we had a nice business going in the United States, and we're big lead gen believers, so we write very compelling notes that have success stories and samples of what we do to many, 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 many executives every week. And one day I got an email back from a company called Flipkart in India, which I had never heard of. I had heard of them enough to write them a note, but I didn't know them because,
Yeah.
I wasn't really focused on India. My job at Warner Brothers was US centric, and there was another Eric who handled the rest of the world. And the version of this tale is, he said, "We believe in personalization. When can we meet?" And way before anybody was doing this because of COVID, this is how we always did our business, because this wasn't Warner Brothers anymore. I wasn't going to hop on a plane and go to India, let alone even fly to New York typically,
Yeah.
because I found this worked, 82% as well. And I could get 7 of these done in a day rather than spending 3 days to go to New York and a lot of expense. Four cards into the deck, this terrific gentleman says, "I love it. We believe this is the future of our entire business. We have our largest sale of the year happening in 4 weeks. We've been doing 2 ads, one that says the big sale is coming. The other ad for years says the big sale is on. And you and I would be seeing dresses and
Yeah.
refrigerators and cribs and high heels along with our clothing that we might like." So
Yeah.
we replaced those 2 ads with 100,000 hyper relevant personalized ads, and we doubled their revenue, multiple billions of dollars more than they did the year before for this 10-day sale. Next thing we knew, the phone started ringing a lot in India, including Amazon. Now, in the world we're in, even though this is a while back, who doesn't want Amazon? Amazon's the
Yeah.
king. Even
Yeah.
though I think Flipkart actually outsells Amazon in India.
In India. How
And
long ago was this? You said it's a while
this
back.
is probably 6 years ago already.
60. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So 5 or 6 years. So Amazon calls up, and we had done one thing in the US. We had done Amazon Prime Video,
Mhm.
telling you about new shows coming to Amazon Prime and why you want to subscribe. And we had, they had only done one ad before. I think we did 24, which is a very small number for us. And it broke every record that they ever had. And next thing we knew, the guys in India wanted to do fashion with us, broke every record. Fire TV broke every record. Alexa Echo broke every record. So they said, now we have our biggest sale of the year, Amazon Prime Day.
Yeah.
And corporately, Amazon Corporate makes 4 ads for Amazon Prime Day. And those ads more or less tell everyone who sees the ad that the reason you want to shop Amazon Prime Day is for the best prices of the year on items like these. And they show us a dress, high heels, handbags, lipstick, romantic comedies, female-oriented pop music. The commercial shows a mother, father, and baby sitting on a park bench in animation style. And so we come up with a strategy instead of the 4 ads for 41,000 ads. And the 41,000 ads, now instead of the mother, father, and baby version, there's a male version, a female version, and a family version. Instead of dresses and pocketbooks, there are 13 different packages of clothing. There are 13 different movie packages going to the specific correct audience. 13 different television, music, health and beauty, electronics. We call out lots of cities. It's India, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. We day part it, looking for big savings this morning, this afternoon, this evening, tonight. And then we add a 12-hour countdown clock for the last 12 hours. So you'll have what they call FOMO, the fear of missing out. I better buy this big television set, or it'll cost me several $100s more, in a day and a half or in 12 hours.
Yeah.
We break every record for the company by a mile. And they immediately call up and say, great, we want to do this again in 4 weeks. We're like, this is great. We have Flipkart and Amazon. And they say, we want to do this in 4 weeks. I say, great. Next thing I know, my client from Flipkart calls up and says, Eric, I need a giant favor. It's now year 2 or year 3, I can't remember. And I need to get 2 weeks exclusive for our biggest sale of the year that we have coming up again. And I say, well, I come from Warner Brothers, and when people buy exclusive things from us, they pay big fees. Eric, I can't pay anymore. We've been this great client. We've been with you now for a year or 2, whatever it is. We do this every single day of the week with you. I'll be a hero. Can you do me a favor? And I say, well, you know what? We only have one other client in India at that point, maybe, named Amazon, and they seem to use us very selectively. And they've already told me that they want to do something in a month, and you want to do something in 10 weeks. I don't think, it seems like it's 2 completely different windows, and there shouldn't be any crossover. And wanting to please someone, I said yes. So we reach back to Amazon and say, hey, Amazon, we got to start working on this thing happening in 4 weeks. And they say, we'll get back to you. And they don't. And they say, we want to push it back a week. And we say, okay, it's time to get working on it. They go, we want to push it back a week. 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 And I say, I can't do this. I've already done and it turns out what they really want to do is do a competitive thing at the same time to try to fight Flipkart. And I, being transparent and honest, said, I'm really sorry, but we've granted another client who's been with us for 2 years, 365 days a year, a 10-day exclusive. And that's the only 10 days of the year I can't do it. And they said, how could you do that? You demon, you this, you that. We're blackballing you. You will never work with Amazon again, so on, so on, and so on, and so on. And that was the end of our relationship with Amazon.
Amazon India or Amazon ever? Like Amazon everywhere?
Amazon everywhere. We're starting to rebuild. We've started to rebuild the relationship. We've now found very kind, smart people who understand what we do. They're still not doing it. So it's coming back, but we lost what could have been one of the world's greatest international clients. And they sort of put out the word, people would say, okay, I'm interested in this. Let me talk to the guys in India. And they would say, oh, the guys in India say you're the devil.
Because that's your only reference.
It didn't make us out, but as we were talking about, it's like if you get the phone call that Disney says we no longer want to use you, we're going to work with your competitor, so it was that kind of a scenario. But you know what? This is what we're always about to get a big investment. You're always about to get this exciting new client, some that you've spent 5 years talking to. I won't mention this client's name because they're so unsophisticated, but here you are. It's a gigantic retailer that everyone in the US knows. And here's what we want to do. Here's our really ugly email, and we have 30 million people on our email list. And so we build this gorgeous thing that moves around, and you click a button and turns into a video, and it tells you 8 things that would be good for you to buy this week. And it's, I would call theirs about a 1. Theirs looks like a print ad from 1986, and ours is really cool. And they go, okay. And we go back and forth for a long time. They say, we want to change. Here's what we need to do. We need to get more people to download our app. And they show us what they've been doing to get people to download their app. And it looks like this. It's one of the least compelling messages you ever saw. And we build this great thing. He says, I'm going to get permission. And I'm like, I know we're dealing with the wrong guy. This guy is not the right guy. And then he comes back and meanwhile, we sent him proposal after proposal. We've gone through pricing. He's saying, we're going to do this. We're going to commit for a year and all of this. And he says, okay, I got permission. This is free, right? We're like, oh, it's not it's not free will. And
Yeah.
let me send you the 8 most recent emails, which in the email and the proposal have the pricing structure. So, now, by the way, we're not down and out either there, and I'm still
Yeah.
gonna try to win them back. But
Yeah.
those are the ups and downs of running these businesses and almost running any business. At Warner Brothers, you thought, you had the same kind of challenges and problems. It's just that one, you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay the electric bill when you're called Warner Brothers.
Very true. Or
As
your
much
own rent.
you do, yeah, when it's Visitor
Yeah.
Q, or AdGreetz.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to the Amazon story. Who is the larger client, Flipkart or Amazon?
Well, Flipkart might be larger in India.
Oh, sorry, revenue wise. Who is larger in revenue wise for you guys?
Oh, well, they were both paying the same fee. They were paying the
They're
same
very
fee.
similar.
Just
Yeah.
that one did it every month, and one was just jumping into the pool and
Yeah.
was out to hire us for the fifth time. Um,
Yeah. And is Flipkart still with you today?
oh yeah,
Do you guys still with? Yeah.
Flipkart's with us today, 365 days a year, and they're back.
Yeah.
They're back at the table right now, negotiating a new 3-year extension.
And
But
with
we like to
Amazon,
think of ourselves. We like to think of ourselves more agnostic, more like a Facebook or a Google, where we can do this for anyone and everyone. We don't.
yeah.
We'd like to do it for Toyota and for
Yeah.
Chevrolet, and for Tesla and every auto company, not just one. Or we'd like to do McDonald's and Burger King, not just one of them, as you would expect someone who's a vendor would like to sell to everyone.
Yeah. And how roughly how much was the Amazon deal worth? I guess over that time or
Well,
over the next 5
on an
years?
individual basis, clients pay us in one territory. They pay us
Yeah.
about $400,000 a year. The beautiful
Okay.
thing about Amazon was they're in, dozens of territories. So in theory, when you had the tremendous success we did in territory one, we could be
Yeah.
going to multiple territories. Flipkart, even though they're owned by Walmart, they're very standalone, and they
Yeah.
don't and they don't have the relationships with the various people at Walmart. And in turn, it's just been that India centric. Although we've gotten 14 other clients in India on and off since then.
Yeah. So if you factor in kind of over the course of the last 5 years in multiple territories, and hopefully, as you said, they're talking to you again. So hopefully that's the course, but potentially 7, 8 figures, right, of revenue that Amazon could be for a client for you currently,
Yep.
and potentially was back then. Yeah.
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 And then the other
And
end, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I just only because we're talking financial model, we're also now starting to work for a lot of ad platforms. We all understand Amazon,
Yeah.
in that case, was a brand. Flipkart's a brand. As an ad platform, that means that a Facebook hires us, or a Twitter hires us, or a streaming platform, and there's a different financial model there. There we get a percentage of the ad spend, or we get a CPM based on the number of people we're going to reach. So we just did a campaign for a very significant retailer in the U.S., and they spent $4 million. So
Yeah.
we either get a percentage of that, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, or a CPM, which is still a very significant $100,000 plus fee on that. So there are sort of a couple of models we go with: either a monthly fee for doing specific things in a specific territory for a specific brand, or doing it, for a Twitter and being a white label provider for them.
And I completely understand that. I come from the ad side too,
Yeah.
working a lot of those platforms. During the Amazon period, was there anyone working on that account, or a few people working on that account that you had to let go, or did it dip
No,
further into savings because they didn't renew?
no, we're always
Um,
understaffed and overworked. So
but
I
yeah.
mean, yes, you know what? We've had one layoff
Yeah.
We had one layoff, not knowing what you're doing when you build these things. If you got,
Yeah.
sort of as lucky and or skilled as I did, and we raised X millions of dollars to start off, I
Yeah.
would argue we didn't realize how hard and long it would take to generate revenue. So we brought
That
in,
first dollar, right?
yeah, we
Yeah.
brought in too many people. We brought in
Yeah.
too many of the wrong people, meaning people my age. I brought in a lot of people from Warner and the world I was in who didn't
Yeah.
really understand, um, the
What
technology.
it takes in those early days,
And,
right? That too.
we paid them to a degree like they were at Warner Brothers. And at one point, we made, sort of significant layoffs, and over time replaced those executives with what I'll call 23 and 24 and 25 and 26, who are now 30 and 31 and 32
Yeah.
year olds, who understood the assignments significantly better, and had skill sets that were more attuned to what we needed to do, and
Yeah.
you know and worked on a fairer salary basis, because they weren't used to working at a big studio who was quite generous.
Yeah. I think
Although
that's
the goal is obviously to pay everybody and be extremely generous. But for a very long time, the goal is not to be out of the game.
yes, to keep going, right? That's the toughest part about early on. And early on, you almost need a different set of employees than you need 0 to 10 employees. The type of employees looks different than 10 to 50, 50 to 1,000 looks way different, and 1,000 above.
Yeah,
That's where those executives really come in.
yeah,
Um, so definitely a bit of a bumpy journey, but things seem to be going well now. You got
yeah.
30
I
or
mean,
so
we're signing
employees,
more and
multiple
more. Yeah,
offices.
it's all about,
Yeah.
recurring revenue. So, in
Yeah.
other words, you don't really want to hire someone to do what you guys do for the month of March. You want them
Right.
March through next February. Um,
Yes.
and then you want more of them. So that's what we're seeing happen.
Yeah.
And then this expansion into OTT, doing advertising, being the platform's white label provider, looks like a terrific opportunity, and we're signing a lot of these platforms around the world. We launch in Australia next month, and and many of them in the queue. So,
Yeah.
and then we're not really selling. We're selling to the platform. The platform's 50 or 150 salespeople. Then they're out talking to the Coca-Colas or the locals, or the national supermarket chain there, and saying, we have a better ad for you. And they're paying a premium. And then we either get that premium or a good percentage of that premium.
Yeah, it sounds like, as I mentioned, things are going really well right now, on all fronts. You got new tech coming out. You got a good set of employees, obviously, and some great offices out there. Uh, Tell me a bit about kind of the surviving these ups and downs that we've talked about. I know you have a few others as well that we talked about before. You mentioned having the money to back it up and dig yourself out obviously helps. Anything on the resilience side that you think, the waking up at 3 a.m. and getting through
Well,
those?
one of the biggest challenges you'll find is, or I found, is having a wife who says, "Why are you spending our nest egg?" You know,
Yeah.
you used to be a high-powered executive who got, and sort of a one percenter, um,
Yeah.
and now you've more or less stopped paying yourself, or you're paying, or you're
Yeah.
the lowest paid employee at the company. You know, getting IOUs over on the side if and when, and so that makes it really rough. There's the expression, happy wife, happy life. So even
Yeah.
though I'm enjoying this and having a lot of fun, if you have to go home at the end of the day, or during COVID, you're home and your wife is less happy because she or your significant other or your partner are saying, is this ever going to work? Are we going to be living in a studio apartment and eating dog food or cat food? Which of course isn't going to be the case. So, so you have to be resilient, and look, we all see as many bad ideas as there are good ideas. And sometimes it may just be that as a founder, you've drank the Kool-Aid. and you may not understand what's a bad idea. And I think you were telling me that you do more different things, than you did when you
Yep.
started. You were telling me about tracking users versus personalizing the website for the user who's coming. So, I'm a big believer in morphing, changing, growing, adding more tools to your toolkit to be,
Yep.
more useful. But yeah, I would argue that there were days, months, and years, and nights where I come down from my bedroom at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and sit in my chair and go, "What the heck am I doing?" And especially because as I left Warner Brothers for a long time, I would continue to get phone calls saying, "Do you want to come and work at this giant studio for lots and lots
Yep.
of money?" Fortunately, Warner Brothers, I had a good closing agreement with them, so there was a cushion to keep me, afloat, and I had saved quite a bit. But it's interesting how quickly you can spend that cushion, lose all the, deplete, start to deplete that savings if and when you start to live like you did when you were this highly paid executive at the other company. Um, until you sit there and go, hey, maybe we should, you don't need to go out for dinners that cost that much money, or whatever. We'll go out to the local ethnic restaurant and have, a great,
Yep. Or the in and out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or the in and out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
there's
just had in and out for the first time. Yeah.
yeah, there's
At risk of sounding like your wife, sorry.
yeah.
What made you do it? Like, what made you leave the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company and chase the entrepreneurial dream? Is it the itch or?
Well, I think, you know what? I always thought that I was, I don't know why, but I thought I was born to be an entrepreneur. Um,
Yeah.
thought that based on how I reinvented this business in college, um, where the guys before me often would do 2, 3, 4 concerts, almost fail out of school, lose all the money that the school had given them to do these concerts with, and I watched the three people before me and saw how they screwed it up and came up with a plan to be more successful, and it worked. So I felt quite
Yep.
confident in my skills and ability at Warner Brothers. Um, I My bosses, let me reinvent quite a bit, but yet I got a little bogged down going. I saw a lot of people who had jobs more senior to me that were risk averse, not very creative. We're getting paid $12 million a year, and and that's about all they had going for them was, that they got
Yeah.
lots of money, um, and spent too much time in meetings that nothing ever happened in. So I said, I think I have an idea, and I'm going to give it a shot. What none of us know when we do this is that it costs a lot more money than any business plan would indicate, and that it's going to take substantially longer than one thinks. So then the question is, can you survive, or are you, out of the game? Um, and for all the success stories we think about or think we read about, you know, the, the overnight success takes 20 years. One of my competitors
Yeah.
just got bought for $500 million. They started 10 years before me.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that there aren't people who come up with amazing things and in 3 years are, phenomenally successful. But there are also a lot of people who sell businesses for billions of dollars that the acquirer says, what is this thing? What did I buy? And shut it down, weeks
Yeah.
later. Um, you know,
Or they sell and they're selling for undervalued, right? They've
yeah,
raised $100 million. They
sure.
can only sell it for three. They have
Well,
to
that's
offload it, right?
the interesting thing about being poor, being, down but not out, is,
Yeah.
you know, is that you've built a company where it's not about foosball tables and kegs of beer and leather couches and we do the dry cleaning for you, which was sort of, a big popular thing 5 and 10 years ago at the internet
Yeah.
companies. But, we've always been down, dirty, scrappy. It's a big deal. When people used to want to come to an office, hey, we're ordering in lunch for everyone because it's Friday and we want to be nice.
Yeah.
But, so there isn't that much to lose. And, I've had times where my investors have said, you're killing yourself. If this doesn't work, we won't be upset at all. We're
Yeah.
wealthy. We understood it. You're in as deep as we are. And if you don't want to do it, don't feel you have to because of us. But, I think then you get into the whole ego of wanting to
Yeah.
make it work for yourself because you think you're smart or talented. You want to show your wife that you were right. Um,
Yep.
and you want to prove that you can generate as much or more wealth for yourself in the same amount of time if you had stayed at one of these giant companies that pays you a lot. But you can do it with your own rules and without many of those silly meetings and the bureaucracy and the risk adverseness that happens, at those other companies. Someone will pick
Yeah.
up.
I've thought. Yeah. I've thought, or and said it multiple times that it's often about the money, right? Money's great. Making $500 million, making $100 million is great, but a lot of the time it's about the ego as well that you can't let down. As long as it's a successful exit,
Yeah,
that it will feed the ego. And the money is usually just a determinant of if it's a successful exit or a non-successful exit, right? I
yeah.
think that's a big thing.
And the more
Last
experience,
question.
yeah, the more experience
Go ahead.
you learn that timing is a lot of it. In other
Yeah.
words, I thought the streaming thing, when I did my first pitch and told people, hey, this is what television is going to be, I thought everybody would say, this is great. And no, it's about persistence in all these businesses too. Besides survival, if your idea is good enough, eventually the world will adopt it and embrace it. But
Yeah.
it could take 10 years instead of 18 months.
Absolutely. Timing's a big thing. Streaming was, I forget who it was, but I remember the story, invented in the 90s. It was just too early. The internet wasn't quick enough. Internet speed wasn't quick enough to actually support streaming. But the last question, because we're kind of on opposite ends here, I left very early in my career and working for someone else to start my own company. And at times I feel like I should have left later and gained more experience, learned from more people, saw how these corporations work. Is there anything, did you think you left at the perfect time? Have you ever reflected on you wish you left earlier? Any reflection on that you've done?
Not a lot. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the answer is I'm always about tomorrow because I can't really reinvent yesterday. Now, if I
Fair
want to
enough.
be practical, I happen to leave on a really bad day, a really bad week, a really bad month, a really bad period where working at a gigantic publicly traded company, I had very significant stock options. And I had many, 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 many of them. But when I left,
Yeah.
the stock options had appreciated about 50 cents. So even if you have several 100,000 stock options at 50
Yeah.
cents, the math isn't very difficult. It's not a
Yeah.
ton of money. 2.5 years later, the stock would have became $80 a share more
Yeah.
valuable. So $80 in profit, or $70 versus 50 cents appreciation would have
Yeah.
been the nest egg to be on my yacht right now. Not that I'm a yacht person and I don't care
Yeah.
about a yacht and I don't want a plane or anything like that. So the only timing is no. I felt you always learn more, and the beautiful thing about this is I learn every single solitary day, and that's what I
Yeah.
enjoy the most is learning. But I don't really regret it, other than bad financial timing on something I couldn't necessarily control, which was, stock price. Um,
Yeah.
but the real answer to your story is I don't know the end yet. If we come back and do this in 1, 2, or 3 years, there should be more of an ending to this story, and it's either it could be, hey, I was wrong and I lost $3 million of my own money and didn't pay myself much for a decade, or
Yeah.
hey, I made Warner Brothers money or I made money like I would have earned at Warner Brothers, or I made money like I would have earned at Warner Brothers times X. And it's not all about money, but money's good to help nieces, nephews, pay college tuitions, help care of, do good things in the world more than, I've got 25 black t-shirts and 10 pairs of blue jeans, you know, um,
Yeah,
and I just need a new pair of Nikes every 6 months. I mean, I obviously have dress up clothing too, but in this world, who wears it anymore? So, life is good.
very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Eric, it's a great story. It really is. Many ups and downs throughout. We'll wrap up here. So thank you. That's all for this episode. And like I said, thank you for sharing your down but not out story. To everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a review. Also, subscribe to the show to be alerted of new episodes. And finally, like and share this episode on social media. Help us spread the word of down but not out. Thanks again, Eric.
Nick, thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Cheers. Bye, everybody.